Toyota Corolla LE versus SE, which one offers the best value for money? Well, based on my 20-year experience as a forecast manager for a large valuation company akin to Kelly's Blue Book, I'm going to tell you which one is best. I'm going to put them side by side, spec for spec, breaking down the differences so that you'll know which Corolla is the smarter buy, and by the end of this video, you'll know whether the SE is worth stretching your budget or the LE gives you more value. As always, if you don't have the time, I have a free website below called checkyourspec.com where you can do exactly what I'm doing right now and check the value of your options and specification. Check Your Spec is a free platform that lets you choose from thousands of options, trims and features, even down to the paint and option codes, and tells you exactly what your car is worth. See how each option affects the current value of your car now and in the future at checkyourspec.com. Okay, let's get straight into it. So at the top there you can see we've got the LE on the left in white and the SE on the right in red. Both have the same engine, 2-litre 4-cylinder engines, front wheel drive. A little bit of homework before we get started. The valuations you're going to see are based on a 3-year 60,000 mile finance profile, which is a typical finance agreement, typical finance profile that you'd see. I'm not going to value any options, it's only standard equipment, and I'm going to value the difference between them. So if it's got different alloys, which in this case this one does, I'm going to tell you what the monetary value difference is that you would see in the used market. Okay, so let's get down to our first little task. First question you're going to ask yourself is, should I spend $22,725 or should I pay $2,440 extra to go to $25,165 for the SE model? That's the ultimate question we're going to ask. Should you spend $2,440? I'm going to tell you at the end whether you should or you shouldn't, and the number will be surprising, so please stick around. So let's get to our first item. We have 16-inch steel wheels with covers and a specific set of tyres for the LE, and on the SE we have 18-inch alloy wheels. So from a valuation perspective, if these were both alloy wheels, there will be no value difference. That would say 0, but because it goes from a steel wheel to an alloy wheel, it's a material difference, and therefore we have to add additional value for it, and that additional value is generally around $400. It depends on the wheel and the brand and the make, but for a Toyota, it's going to be about $400. Think of it as $100 per corner of the car. It's a nice, easy way to think of it. Next item, we have intermittent windshield wipers on the LE and variable intermittent windshield wipers on the SE. Now, the variable should be on the LE as standard. This is something I would advise Toyota in my previous job. Just put that on the basic version as standard. Don't mess around with, that's not a selling point. It kind of is to some people, but it really isn't. From a valuation perspective, we don't look at it that way. So we would value it as a 0. We'd tell Toyota it's worth a 0. But if they put it on the base version, maybe we would add a bit more value to it because it's across the whole lineup. So that's the way we would do it. Single exhaust with dual chrome tips. No additional value for that. Basically, it's an exhaust. Just because it's got dual chrome tips on the end of it doesn't really mean anything to us from a valuation perspective. So that gets a 0. Next, we come down to the front lights. So you can see there on the left-hand side, I've got LED daytime running lights, in brackets DRL, and accent lighting. On the LE, you don't get that. On the SE, you get the accent lighting. I put $50 on that. I'd need to see the car in person to see exactly which specific areas it's going to accent. But if it's a visual change at the front, which I believe it is from what I've seen in the pictures, you have to accommodate that in terms of a value change, which I have done, and I've added $50. Again, you've got to be thinking in 3 years' time. This is not today. This is if you buy it and then sell it in 3 years' time, that change. Next up, we have LED headlights and LED daytime running lights, and they've separated them out on the LE to make it really confusing, but basically it's exactly the same as it is on the SE, which is why I've got an arrow and a square basically showing that they both come with LED headlights and daytime running lights. We'll come down to the grey metallic sport side rocker panels and colour keyed rear spoiler. Again, it's another visual difference on the exterior. I have to recognize it, mostly for the color keyed rear spoiler, and I've added $50. Again, this is a Toyota, it's not, it's a Corolla, it's not a Supra or anything like that. So you have to accommodate the pricing accordingly, and in this case it's going to add a little bit of value because it's a visual change, but not as much as you might suspect. So $50 for that. Black front grille, versus a Sport Mesh gloss black front grille on the SE. Again, I've just done the same value again. There'll be a slight visual change, even though they are both black, but I have to recognize that it's been changed, so therefore it has a value change. Next up, we have on the LE color keyed power outside mirrors. So they are powered, you can move them around and make sure you can see the curb and whatnot. The difference on the SE is that you get heated power outdoor mirrors. Now this is going to be very market dependent, especially in the US. For example, I live in Texas and I have not once touched my heated door mirrors. However, if you live somewhere else like Montana or Alaska, you're probably going to touch that button every now and again, so you'll pay a little bit extra. However, as an average, I think it's worth about $75 on this particular vehicle. Next up, we have the interior. We're going from an optional driver and front passenger sun visor with illuminated vanity mirrors, and that is standard on the SE. That should be standard across the range. That's just Toyota being cheap, basically. But vanity mirrors, illuminated sun visors, come on, Toyota. This should be standard. So it's a zero value for them, unfortunately. Next item, metallic interior trim with chrome interior door handles. Another zero value. It's not going to make a massive difference, especially in your purchasing decision if it has chrome interior door handles, so it gets a zero. Next up, we have fabric trimmed 6-way adjustable driver's seat and 4-way adjustable front passenger seat on the LE, and that goes to sport seats with sport fabric inserts on the SE. This is a zero. Why? This isn't a sports car. It's going from an LE to an SE. You should probably stick with the same fabric trimming and just change the adjustment. So instead of having a 6-way adjustable driver's seat, maybe it's a 6-way power adjustable driver's seat, but keep the fabric the same. So it does unfortunately get a zero. You know, if this was the sports version, I would expect to see sports seats, but this is the SE version, so it's not going to get any additional value. Next item is the steering wheel. Now, there's lots of information on here, but basically it's a 3-spoke steering wheel with audio, Bluetooth, dynamic radar cruise control, lane departure, and steering assist on the LE. On the SE, the only difference is that it's leather trimmed. So there is a slight valuation change for something like that. As you'd expect, it's a much nicer steering wheel to hold. But again, in 3 years' time, it's going to be grubby. Might be slightly damaged, might be, you put it into the fair wear and tear category. So you don't get a massive amount because it's leather trimmed. So I've only added $50 for something like that. The next one is on the LE. It's optional to get the smart key system on the front doors and trunk with a push button start, remote keyless entry system with lock, 2-stage unlock, panic and trunk release functions. And on the SE, that is standard. I've added a little bit of value for that. However, if you look below, on the LE, you still get a multifunction in-key remote keyless entry with lock, unlock, panic, and trunk release. So the only difference is that it's a smart key system on the front doors and a push button start. So I've added a little bit of extra value for that, just for the convenience of the smart key system on the front doors and being able to get into your car that way. But it's not a massive amount. So that's why it's $150. And then we'll come down to whatever is next. Engine. They're both the same engine, both 2-litre 4-cylinder engines. But on the SE, they have, instead of a normal and eco driving mode on the LE, they've introduced a sport mode on the SE. Again, it's pretty pointless. We're not going to add any value for something like that. It's not a sports car. It probably just changes the gearing a little bit when you push it into sport to make it feel sporty, but it's the same brake horsepower. So why would we add any extra value? And that's the mentality we go with. So a zero for that one. Coming down again. Okay, suspension. So on the LE, you get independent McPherson struts with stabilizer bar, multi-link rear suspension. And on the SE, you get independent McPherson strut front suspension with stabilizer bar and torsion beam rear suspension. So you go from multi-link to a torsion beam. So in the valuation world, generally speaking, we don't add value for things we can't see. That includes things like safety equipment. So when I get onto a vehicle eventually where you have to pay to be more safe in a vehicle, you'll see that I value that as 0. But in this case, we're talking about suspension. Nobody's going to get under the car and be like, oh, has that got the torsion beam suspension or the multi-link rear suspension? That's up to the sales guy to sell you on that item and whether you want to pay any extra for it. But from a valuation perspective, the way we used to do it, independent rear suspension, if it was multi-link or torsion beam, whatever it happens to be, it's just 0. We don't add value for things like that. And that is the way that they will still do it today. Now, come to the final section of what we're doing, which is what everything costs, what you're going to spend, and is it worth it? So you're going to potentially spend $2,440 to go from the LE to the SE. All that equipment I've just listed is worth $775. Again, this is in 3 years' time. I think it's worth $775. So over 3 years, you're going to lose $1,665. It's pretty terrible, honestly, from the SE's perspective. That is a conversation I would have with Toyota to try to bolster their residual value, otherwise known as the RV. But you want to at least expect half the value back in 3 years' time. So instead of it being worth $775, you'd want that to be worth $1,200, or half of what you've spent. So for it to be under that number and by quite a significant amount is a little bit worrying. They probably need to get a valuation company involved just to kind of steer them in the right direction in terms of their spec. And this is just on Corolla. If you look at my Supra video or other Toyota videos, Toyota generally do a very good job of how they spec their vehicles. But going from the LE to the SE is not worth it, in my opinion. It might look slightly different. It might give you more options in terms of paints, but it's the same engine. There's a few interior niceties like the leather trimmed steering wheel and easier to get into your car, etc. And the seats are slightly sportier, but it's not enough. It's not enough in my view. I'd go back to Toyota with something like this. They more than likely wouldn't be happy with what I'd sent to them, and then they would ask my advice on what they should do. But in this case, that's my answer. Don't get the SE. Stick with the base SE model, base LE model, and then go from there. Or maybe look at a vehicle higher up in the range, which I'm going to do some videos on as well. So please like and subscribe for that. Hope you enjoyed the video. Appreciate your time. See you guys in the next one. Cheers.